Hello, nice to meet you all.
Hello.
If there are no other benefits, then at least it makes it easier perhaps to have these types of meetings that we've got to. But I think that's about it.
It will be my first meeting. I just joined the CWA last year.
So that must be a strange time to have joined as well.
Well, I don't know if it's already started, if you are expecting more people, but last summer I hosted through warm showers a young French guy who cycled across Norway, and he was hosted by Ole. And he told me about cycling without age. I looked at the map and I thought, my God, there's no branch here, and I decided to have a go.
Excellent. Good.
Doesn't make the fundraising easy.
No.
Dag Luc, hoort mij?
Ik hoor u, dag Herman.
Wel dat hij toch zo stil is, dacht ik.
Ja, alles goed?
Even in het Nederlands.
Ja,
Ça va.
er zijn nog wel andere deelnemers, maar...
Ja, maar ze zijn allemaal stilletjes aan het zwijgen, dus ja. We gaan...
Good morning.
Hello.
Hello everybody.
Hi, Vibeke.
Hi, good evening.
People are starting to show up. I can see we have Vibeke from Denmark. We have Aldo from Brazil. Peter, you're from Netherlands, right? And Luc from Belgium.
I'm from Belgium.
Yes. Awesome. Tormod from Norway. We have Christine from Scotland. And Tanya from Austria. Ina from Belgium. Richard from England. and Gary from Ottawa. Hi, Gary.
Minus 26 here today.
Minus 26.
Yes, sir. Good day for a bike ride.
And that's Celsius, right?
Yes, sir.
Have you been
Myself
outside yet?
from Spain. Hello, from Spain.
Oh, hi, Ricardo. Is it cold in Spain too?
Well, it's wet, not very cold, but very wet and windy.
Okay. But you had a lot of snow over the past several weeks, right?
Yes, not at the moment, but we had a lot of snow, 2-3 weeks ago, which is quite rare here in Spain, but yeah.
I know, it's a bit crazy. And we have Clara from Dublin.
Hi, Clara.
Hi, everyone. Good to see you all. Yeah, like Spain, we have wet and windy weather, but no snow.
Well, we have glorious sunshine in Scotland today.
Oh, lovely. Lovely to see you, Christine.
Yeah, you too.
Hi, Christine.
Hi, Ollie. I see Indigo from San Sebastian. Hi, Indigo.
And we have Dorte from Denmark as well. We have Pernille from Denmark.
Very good.
Good to see you.
It's going to be a busy.
Akita and Hui from Portugal.
Hello. Oh.
Natalie in Germany. Tonio from Spain as well.
Hi, Ole.
Oh, and we have Lars from Denmark there as well. On the Atlantic. Did I see Angela from Australia as well?
Oh, yeah.
Yes, you did. Hello, everybody.
Wow, that must be very late.
Hello.
You're in Victoria, right?
It's 1 a.m. in the morning. Yes.
It's already Sunday for you.
Oh, well, I can sleep later. Yes.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Already Sunday.
Okay, so we're covering a lot of continents. So I guess we should just we should get cracking. I think we are, we're quite a few people on, and we're recording this this conversation. So everybody who couldn't make it today can always go back and revisit. And I'll explain that in a little more detail as we carry on. So hi everyone, and thank you so much for joining this call, which is part of the new series on Zoom called CWA Conversations. And today's topic is, I think, quite fittingly, restarting after the pandemic. I think we're all crossing our fingers that we can begin to see the light shine through the cracks. And I suspect also that this will be a theme that will probably get back a few more times over the next 6 months as the world slowly starts to reopen. And it's really good to see you all again for today's conversation. We have a wonderful guest, Vibeke Koushede, and many of you have already submitted questions that we will bring up in the conversation that follows the conversation with Vibeke. On today's call, we have also a broad section of partners and affiliates operating on both national and regional levels. And as we continue to build this CWA conversations, my idea is that we expand this to affiliates, volunteers, elders, staffers worldwide. And it may branch off regionally or by interest. So let's just see where this might take us. On a practical note, just always have your mic muted unless you speak. And if you could also please edit your name to include both your name and your country. And you do that by just hovering over your picture, and there are 3 little dots, and then you can change your name so that people know where you're from. That's always nice to know. So last year around this time, many of us were planning to meet in Sandefjord in Norway for the annual CWA summit, which we've done so many times before. And it was supposed to be one of the most amazing events ever, taking place during the national celebrations in Norway. With affiliates joining from 4 continents, we had lots of people had already booked trips from Australia, from North America, and so on. And Susan Pinker was to have come and was going to be telling us all about blue zones and party with us. And what we were going to do was what we always do, make friends and inspire each other, both face to face in trishaws and on the dance floor. But look how things have changed since then. The summit was cancelled and we're now meeting online instead. And I guess we've all sort of become experts in making conference calls. And all our kids are on there going to school online. And you know, the CWA community has stayed in touch through calls like this and on social media. And I'm really thrilled to see that it may actually in some shape or form have brought us all closer together as well. And so we're still close and we're hanging on, although we've all become a little square. Maybe you also have a favorite passenger that you miss. I really used to look forward to riding with Torkim. And actually, I still visit him from time to time, although he passed away 2 years ago at the age of 100. But his soul seems to have found a tree that really reminds me of him. It's like an old, ancient tree. And not just because they were both around for more than a century. I do miss him, and I'm grateful that I get to build relationships like the one I had with him, thanks to Cycling Without Age. In the last 2 years, I have especially enjoyed trishaw rides with a woman called Tove, who is another centenarian, and her stories are the best. And she's as sharp as any person my age or younger. Just before the pandemic, she became so frail that she couldn't get out of her wheelchair and into the trishaw anymore. And she doesn't have access to a wheelchair cargo bike where she lives. And when the pandemic hit, I unfortunately had to stop seeing her altogether because of the isolation. And we had no contact really for a long time, until 2 months ago, when I decided to call on her and reconnect and ask her if she wanted to go for a walk with me, because that was then still possible, in her wheelchair. And she said yes. And now we speak on the phone almost every day. She is, like I said, she's crisp. She knows all about current affairs. She will challenge me with all kinds of things, which I really enjoy. And I hadn't realized until recently that I have more to offer than just a trishaw ride. I'm telling you this anecdote because the world has changed, and so must we as an organization. We don't know how, and we won't know all the change that's going to happen, and we won't all change the same way or at the same pace. But I think what is important is that we support each other on this ride. I believe that Cycling Without Age is more relevant now than ever. The whole world is talking about loneliness and social isolation, talking about slowness and public spirit. And these are all areas that are so core to Cycling Without Age. So we really have something to give to the world. We are part of the solution. And I'm convinced that we'll be able to use the awful reality of a global pandemic as an opportunity for social impact. And the topic today is restarting after the pandemic. The question is how, when, and with whom. And to kick this off, we've invited a very special guest and a long-time friend of Cycling Without Age, Vibeke Koushede, to kick off the conversation with what we hope will be an inspirational conversation. And Vibeke, you're the head of Department of Psychology and a professor in mental health promotion at the University of Copenhagen. Yes. And you were formerly senior researcher at the Danish National Institute of Public Health, where I remember when we started the collaboration around the program called the ABCs of Mental Health. And I believe it was also maybe subsequent to that you also featured in our documentary called The Grey Escape, about a group of elders and their bike ride to Norway. Remember that?
Yes, yeah.
And actually, just incidentally, that documentary is still available to watch on cyclingwithoutage.org. So if you haven't seen it yet, just go and have a look at it or revisit it again. It's I go back and see it from time to time. There's a lot of joy and wisdom to be found in there. So, so Vibeke, welcome to the conversation, and
Thank
welcome
you very much.
to Cycling Without Age.
Thank you. Yes, and I've been looking forward to being here. And it's like I just spoke to a few of you about when we started, that if nothing else, this gives an opportunity to perhaps even meet more than we would have been able to if we'd been open and in Denmark. So in that sense, it's also trying to look at the benefits of being able to connect in different ways. But it is true, yes. And actually, Ola, I think at the time, I can tell a little bit more about that later, about the ABCs of mental health. But it's actually because at the time when I took a hold of you initially, it was because I was thinking that you are actually everything, you know, this organization is everything we would like people to remember to do, to act, belong and commit. And this was sort of a really good case to show that this could be one way of doing it. So definitely.
I'm so pleased you say that, because I suspect, you know, this conversation will probably be a lot about mental health. And you've already given us just a little hint of that, but maybe we could start by just running just through a quick intro of the ABCs of mental health.
Absolutely, yes. And if any of you have questions underway, I mean, you can also, for my sake, just put them in the chat, and we will also, as I've understood it, there'll be plenty of opportunity to discuss this afterwards. But in short, you can say that I work within mental health promotion, but the term mental health is very broad, just like if you spoke about physical health, and it's quite a complex term. So if I asked a psychiatrist what is mental health, they might answer from one perspective. If we asked a football trainer or one of you, you might answer from slightly different perspectives. And it isn't to say that some are right or some are wrong. It just goes to underline that it is very broad. So we need to be on the same page as to what we understand with mental health and what the premises are that we're working to promote it. And so the way my research group and I work is very much in line with the World Health Organization, where they said it's a state of well-being where we can realize our own potential, where we can work productively and fruitfully together with others, and that we feel part of our community. So it's very much, and other than just the absence of mental health problems, it's very much a sense of having something and someone to get up for in the morning. The feeling that we are part, that we belong, that we've got something that we can contribute with and to. And so when I first embarked in this research area, I was a little bit disheartened that we know so much from research about what we should be doing to promote mental health and how we should be working in our communities and in society as a whole, and it wasn't happening. And that was because even with these definitions, it's still very big and fluffy. So the ABCs of mental health, you could say, is a research-based framework for condensating everything we know from research is important to mental health and well-being, namely being able to act, belong, and commit. Now, they're different. We have different life circumstances. There are different reasons as to why we may experience periods of poor mental health, but it's important for all of us, regardless of whether we're young or old, rich or poor, healthy or unhealthy, to be able to do something with someone, and to do something meaningful. To have a sense of meaning and purpose, something and someone to get up of bed for in the morning.
I think I quite like the fact that it's very action oriented, and it has like the positive approach to mental health, because like you said, if you're a psychiatrist, maybe your approach will be more the pathological approach of what is wrong, and you're trying to figure that out, rather than trying to focus on what you can do to actually improve the circumstances, right?
Exactly, yes. And I'd say it isn't that one should then stand instead of another. I mean, there are definitely people that need, and it's important that we have appropriate and timely treatment for those who need this. It's also important that we have a focus on prevention, which is very often focused on risk factors for developing poor mental health. Naturally, we should have this, but it can't stand alone. And we can clearly see this on the numbers as well. Like you said, Ola, we've seen a vast increase in mental health problems worldwide, increases in stress, anxiety, loneliness, depression. And I think it's very important that we remind ourselves that we are social creatures by nature. We're hardwired for connection. We all need to have a sense of being able to contribute, and that that there is a need for us. So it's having that perspective as well.
Awesome. I'm actually very curious, Vibeke, about what researchers are investigating right now during the pandemic. Can you give us some examples of studies being carried out in your field?
Yes, well, I'd say it's at the moment, it's a lot about monitoring. So it's a lot about monitoring mental health worldwide. And not surprisingly, I mean, we can see that people are getting even lonelier. A lot of people are feeling a lot of pressure. Anxiety is rising and things like this. So in a sense, you could say this isn't surprising. I would have liked for more research being done in terms of how are we finding creative ways to try and go about this? What is it that works for who, how, under what circumstances? I feel that would have had perhaps a stronger perspective.
Is that something that you feel that perhaps laymen can do? Can we do something?
Yes, I would say that there is a definitely, I mean, in terms of if you could collect case materials, if you could perhaps from using perhaps some of the same questions, because it would be stronger if you did this across, asking those that you get into touch with, what is it that, what is it that they're missing perhaps? What is it that they feel that what you're coming with is contributing with? And things like this. This would definitely be, there's coming more and more sort of science or citizen science where it's not actually scientists doing it, but where we've got loads of locals out there collecting data in real life, you could say.
So it's like really crowdsourcing research.
Yes, yeah. I think that would be very beneficial, and especially if actually I hadn't thought about this before. You just asked me, but especially because you've got such a strong network. If you actually all asked similar, or the same wording of questions, you would have a very, very rich data source across the world.
Yeah. Well, maybe we should try and figure out what those questions are, and we could discuss them in our online forum afterwards. And we'd love to see if we can make a contribution there. And actually, it leads on to just a question about, in your opinion, what the role is of an organization like Cycling Without Age during this pandemic.
Yes. Well, I think civic society plays a huge role in general in terms of promoting mental health and well-being. It's a very, very big resource, and obviously in terms of crisis, I think this it's become very obvious everywhere that the go-to places are our communities. In Denmark, we've been doing a lot of singing together. It's it's very much based on our social connections and people reaching out to one another. So I think that if nothing else, I'm hoping that this will be something that will be more obvious to everyone, that that organizations like yourselves are not just nice to have, they actually need to have. You enable people to act, belong and commit in various manners. I mean, I know that then there will be differences across the countries in terms of how much you've been able to actually cycle with people, but the examples you came with in terms of for your own mental health, actually, we know that it's very good to do something for someone else. That gives us a sense of belonging and meaning as well. But it's also that someone the other end, when you're phoning her, feels important and feels connected. And has got something to look forward to in the morning to get out of bed. So the most important thing for our mental health and well-being, without a doubt, and we know this from ample research, is the quality of our social relationships. It's our connections. This is where we can help or get emotional support and sometimes practical help. But there is nothing above and beyond our social relationships. So having someone who has the time to reach out and connect and show a genuine interest is well, you can't even put a number on it. It's more valuable than most things you could do.
Yeah. And actually, it goes completely in line with one of our previous guests in the Zoom calls here, Susan Pinker from Canada, who also has found through lots of research that social connectedness and close relations are the two most important factors for happiness and longevity of life. And so I guess really you could say that with the way that people feel isolated right now and maybe left on their own, will have a detrimental effect to their quality of life and maybe also their longevity.
Yes, absolutely. There's no doubt that the restrictions and the situation in general will have a lot of negative consequences for mental health and well-being, and we can see this already. The question is how long, whether it's going to have long-term consequences. We can see a lot of people are suffering here and now, which is what we would expect as well. But then there will be some groups that are more vulnerable, where we're a bit worried as to the long-term consequences. And I suppose this is again where I'm thinking that organizations like yourselves, we have to be physically isolated, but not socially, or physically distanced, but not socially isolated. And I think this is where really it's about looking at what opportunities are then still there to transform some of all that energy and passion all your volunteers have for reaching out and connecting with other people. Because I'm sure that those who join Cycling Without Age, it's not first and foremost because they like biking or that they're, concerned with muscle strength in their legs. That's also important, but I'm sure it's a lot more to do with the the heart blow, the connecting with everyone around them.
Yeah, I can see a lot of people nodding on the screen here, because I think we can all completely connect with that statement. Vibeke, I know that your field is not care homes as such, but given your expertise on mental health, what physical and emotional effects has the care home lockdown had on the residents and maybe on staff and on family members? I mean, where are they going to be when this thing ends?
Well, there's no doubt that this has had huge negative consequences in a lot of ways, because we can see a lot of people in care homes also, especially those who might have beginning suffering dementia, who also don't understand what's going on, who are just in a severe lack of having the people closest to them come around and don't understand the situation. That's obviously one situation, but just being isolated from your loved ones and dear ones is a huge pressure on people. It's a huge pressure on staff as well, because some of them have had to perhaps run even faster. And in a busy day-to-day life, I mean, this is unfortunately the sad case in a lot of care homes. This is where volunteers or family, or they're the ones that bring in some of this warm hands. And so here suddenly we may have staff that have to try and cover that as well, and may or may not have the time as well, while also being affected themselves on their own mental health and stress. And then for the families who can't come in and see their loved and dear ones, that's a big strain as well.
So I mean, do you expect us to see some particular reactions when we get back our freedom after this long period of isolation? I mean, are we going to be forever changed?
Yes, I mean, yes and no, because the thing is, we know that human beings, first of all, we're a lot more resilient than we often think we are. We can actually deal with very high levels of strain, as long as that strain doesn't go on for too long. And this is where my concern is, that it's first of all the duration of the pressure we're under, combined with the uncertainty. Now, if we had a clear date at once we hit this date, then everything's going to go back to normal, then it'd be easier. A little bit like running a marathon, it's that there's going to be an end to it. But then saying that, we also know that once people go back to normal from even very stressful situations, we tend to forget very quickly. This isn't, for example, the first pandemic we've had. It isn't in our time, but as a race, human beings tend to forget very quickly, and we tend to bounce back. And we need to also in terms of coping with this. But I think, or I think once we open up, we will see high levels of joy, people reconnecting, and perhaps a higher level of gratitude, things we've taken for granted up until now. There seems to be a lot of people who are suddenly becoming a lot more aware of the need to be part of a community, how much we actually mean to one another, that we are social creatures by nature and hardwired for connection. So my hope is also that solidarity and the wanting to reach out will increase.
That's very comforting to hear that that first of all we are resilient, and in that respect we also do have some limits to our memory, so that we will go back and after a while maybe not be too affected by what's been going on. But I mean, obviously we've been operating for quite a few years now in thousands of communities, and when the pandemic hit, it was affecting really predominantly our core beneficiaries, the elders, and all the activities that we were doing. And so it sort of begs the question, what do you think our movement may have lost, and what may we have gained due to the corona pandemic?
Well, in terms of what you've lost, it's obviously valuable time, especially because, I mean, these are when it's very much elderly people that you're cycling with, time is precious. And this is also why I understand the restrictions, but sometimes I have to say I've sat there thinking in the cost benefit aspects of it, because it's so precious time. Yes, so this is what you've lost, definitely. And then I don't know anything about obviously the financial circumstances or how it gets run around. I know that it's very, very volunteer driven, but I think what you may have gained is a bigger public understanding of the huge contribution that organizations like yourselves are to society, and the big benefits of our social connections, that mental health is something we create together. Mental health and well-being is only as strong as the networks we have around it, as our communities, and that civic society has a huge role to play in this. So I think that that understanding is definitely growing. I can sense that in Denmark, where before I think it's been a sense that this is kind of perhaps nice to have but not need to have. I definitely feel that there's a shift in this.
So you think the overall level of empathy in our societies will have gone up because we now understand what it's like to be what I think the Swedes call involuntarily lonely?
Yes, and I actually think I wouldn't have wished this situation on anyone, but I do think that for a lot of people it's been difficult to understand that this is actually the reality for a lot of people all the time. You know, we've had so many people who've been isolated and lonely, and who've been unable to participate in everyday life, either through physical health problems or mental health problems. So I think in a sense that everyone's had a taste of, it's really not that fun to be isolated and to not be able to go out and be part of the rest of the community or the world. I think this will definitely, it's always easier when you felt it in a sense on your own body.
And so do you think that might also even make it more likely that we could perhaps even attract whole new groups of volunteers? I mean, people who might otherwise not have seen themselves as volunteers?
Yes, I think if you, and this is again, especially if you make sure to be visible, and if you make sure to communicate clearly that this is also because I mean it's for the pilot, it's for the people you do something for, but it's also very much for the pilots, the sense of being part of something, being part of a group, being able to contribute, having all these social connections. I think if you're really able to get that message very clearly across, a lot of people have had the time to think about when you boil everything down, what is important in life.
Yes. Well, thank you so much, Vibeke. And what you've said gives me an understanding of what the opportunities are for an organization or a movement like ours. And I certainly, from my own perspective, and I can also maybe just judge from some of the head movements of people around, that it brings on a lot of hope. And now I'd like to ask all of you if you have any questions or comments for Vibeke. And if you have, you can just either raise your hand or you can unmute and ask your question to Vibeke.
I can see there are a lot of comments in the chat, but I haven't, I didn't have time. I wasn't able to read them at the same time. So I don't know if there are any.
Just see if I can read some of them.
Maybe I can kickstart by asking you something, Vibeke. Can you hear me?
Yes, yes, absolutely.
So I actually have a couple of questions. But let me just start with the first one. You said that the vulnerable groups, you were talking about that now we're already seeing more depression than we used to see, and it's expected during a pandemic. And then you said that we don't know yet if there are long-term effects on vulnerable groups. Can you tell us a little bit about what is a vulnerable person in social isolation?
Yeah, actually, I'd say that we're all vulnerable because we're human beings. So just to point out that it's very difficult to predict. Sometimes the people we feel may be part of a vulnerable group in general turns out to be handling this type of situation very well. And sometimes someone who we would think was on top of the world suddenly finds it hugely troublesome. So I think the reason is I generally talk more about vulnerable groups than vulnerable individuals, but our life circumstances vary and the resources available to us vary greatly. So when we look at this, we could say young children can be a vulnerable group in the sense that for them it can be difficult to understand time. They're at a vulnerable age in developing their social relationships with their peers. And if they're stuck at home with parents who have to work at the same time, they may not be getting what they need. So that's one way of looking at vulnerability. Then we know that people who are already in socially disadvantaged families with a lot of other strains, they may be even more vulnerable here because they may be stuck at home. It can be violence in the home, it can be alcohol problems. That would be a different kind of vulnerability. People who have already got mental health problems would be a different kind of vulnerability. And then older people who might have physical health problems and perhaps not have very big, strong social networks because perhaps their relatives or are far away or they haven't got that many friends, their age group, that would be a different kind of vulnerability. But just to stress that I always think that everyone is vulnerable. That's part of being a human being. And this is really where we should look at resilient communities and resilient groups and how we can support one another throughout the life course, throughout different circumstances.
Thank you.
Resilience is one of the key words that we need to take away from this conversation. So feel free, everyone. Yeah, I can see Christine. Christine, do you want to ask a question?
Yep. I'm unmuted, yeah?
Yes, you are unmuted, yes.
No, it's just an observation actually, Vibeke, that we in Scotland we have identified with not just vulnerable people in our passengers that we take out, but also in our members of chapters. We've noticed some of our seniors who were particularly vulnerable have benefited hugely just from being part of the chapter and
yes,
a role within that chapter. And I'd like to name two of our two people that we have on, we've actually invited to our board who are in their 80s, and they've developed new, very strong friendships with other fellow board members. And both have said actually it has been a lifeline for them, just to, even in the pandemic, to be calling each other on a weekly basis. One calls one week, one returns a call the next week, and they've developed a very strong bond.
Yeah.
And they've said without the wider network of Cycling Without Age during the pandemic, even although they've not been engaging in rides, they're engaging with each other. And in their senior years, that has been a huge benefit to them. It has re-stimulated their whole understanding of social well-being, and it has given them a lifeline. So I don't think we should take our eye off that within our chapters, because it's a very valuable asset that the project is.
And I think that actually underlines it. This is one of your huge strengths, is the network that you've got. So even those places where you can't come out and cycle, you've still got the network.
Yeah.
And I also think it's an opportunity for people to volunteer. We've seen in Denmark that some of, like, perhaps going back to what you were saying, Pernilla, so we've seen people here. I was in touch with one girl who's actually got severe mental health problems and strong eating disorder and loads of things. But as part of this, she actually suddenly felt that now there was an opportunity for her to volunteer and to help out. And she said that that had done her mental health a world of good, because suddenly there was actually someone needed her. So this is where as well, even having the opportunity to volunteer can also help people.
Those are wonderful comments. Dorte, you also had a question?
Yeah, maybe it's a comment as well, close to the one from Christine, but what we saw is what you mentioned, Vibeke, that the need for, somebody relying on us, when the total shutdown in Denmark, we had people calling from almost day one. I mean, the pilots, the passengers, families, even the staff. What can we do? I mean, what can we do when it's a lockdown? So we stepped up on digital connections, where we started to say, okay, let's meet digital. And we had like 45 people on the first meeting, just trying to figure out what else can we do. And there was a huge innovative atmosphere where people started writing Easter postcards. They brought flowers to the passengers, handed it over. They arranged sing songs, visiting, knocking on the windows. They would do all kinds of things. And an old pilot, he was like 72, and he said, I really need to go out on that bike. I do 200 rides a year. What else can I do? Yeah. And so the pilots we have found are just as well in need for, being able to do something, to act, to still belong to something. So we have actually found out that we are going to do a lot more digital, virtual meeting, webinars across the country to the locals, as you said, Christine, because we really reach out to a lot more people, actually. A lot more people feel connected in a lot of different ways. So for that, the Corona has been good. It has developed new stuff that we will keep on really exploring, because we heard so many more voices. I mean, there were so many more voices trying to frame what should we focus on in Denmark. So that has been a really, really huge advantage of going virtual, actually. Yeah.
We have another question here from Tony in Minnesota. Tony, do you want to unmute and ask a question?
Minneapolis.
Yes.
Yes. My question has to do with mental health metrics. We are embarking on a program here later this year that will be a food access and a food security program for elderly folks who are shut into their homes. Yeah. And we're trying to, because we're changing the rules in a way of how we engage with our passengers, I'm interested to know if there are any metrics that we can be looking at measuring to help measure the success of the program.
Yes, so there are definitely loads of different items and measures you can use for mental health, but I think it's very important to first of all know what it is the question is, because just like physical health, it's, like I said initially, very broad. So if you asked about loneliness, that would be one way of asking, but if you asked of how often, do you connect to anyone else? Do you feel that there's meaning and purpose? That would be other ways. So is it actually questionnaires or items that you're asking for? You say metrics, it's because I'm not quite sure.
Sure. I mean, probably it would and could come from questionnaires, but I think also, questionnaires are from the pilots as well as the passengers. But also the community service agencies, which will be helping to point us toward our passengers. So
I suppose
I guess what I'm looking for, go ahead. Sorry.
No, you go ahead.
I suppose what I'm looking for is just help with understanding, even from a broad perspective to start with, and then narrowing it down as we proceed, of just understanding kind of what metrics might be important to measure and then report on.
Yes, and I think this is, I think it's important if you then look, this is why I would say, obviously looking at the opportunities that this gives for people to act, belong and commit, because you could do that at the different levels. I think what Dordu was saying as well, in a sense, it's also one of the opportunities you've got is actually also to inform the people you get into touch with, what they can do to look after their own mental health and that of others. Because initially you could say, is it important for pilots or your pilots to know that what they're doing is good for their mental health? They intuitively probably know this, right? This is also why, they go along, they feel good. But then when you suddenly haven't got the opportunity to do this, it might be important to think, well, then what are actually the key ingredients in this? One of them is that you get out and about. You get, we know physical activity is also important, that you get out in the fresh air, you get the wind in your hair, as I know is one of your mottos, that you actually get to connect to someone else, and that you get to contribute to someone else's joy. So I think you could use this the entire way. And it's very much a two-way connection or a three-way connection, because the elderly also get to contribute. The person you're talking to, Orla, gets to, contribute with all her knowledge and her wisdom and her good stories. So it also is, it's not something that you're doing for someone. I think this is the problem in a lot of the general activities that we see. They're not very empowering. Very often we say, oh, are you old and lonely? Then you can come down here and paint on porcelain. And I don't know how old or lonely I will get, but I don't think that would to me be a very meaningful way of taking part, that I could then just come down here and be jotted down with all the other old lonely people. Whereas if it was actually, I would really like to hear your stories, you're contributing,
so
yeah.
And actually, it reminds me as well that I've heard someone with wise words of the fact that we all have a need to feel useful.
Yes.
That we can be of use to someone, and I think that is luckily we reciprocate to each other. So there is no sort of beneficiary and a giver. We are giving and we're taking at the same time.
Yeah.
And I think that's important to keep in mind as we go through this. Vibeke, again, thank you so much. It's been a true pleasure to be able to tap into such an amazing wealth of knowledge. We will use this conversation to make the best of a difficult time. And if there are more questions for you, we might just send you an email with some follow-up questions.
You're always more than welcome. And I am really glad that, organizations like yours do give me hope, because this is really what we need in terms of improving the rates of mental health worldwide. We need more people to volunteer. We need more people to reach out to one another. And we need to just, have these sorts of strong opportunities to act, belong and commit. So thank you very much to all of you.
Thank you very
Thank
much
you.
for coming.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
So in this next segment, the idea is that we engage in a conversation, and now we only have about 15, 20 minutes left. And so, of course, with the number of participants and the limited time, we can't really all talk and share as much as we would like. But that's where the conversation will continue afterwards in our online community, the Hood. And Pernille will now share a link to the CWA conversations category in the Hood in the chat. And you can click on that link and go straight into that area where we can continue this conversation, and where you can also ask further questions to Vibeke, for instance. We can create more subcategories if we want as well. So for right now, the format is this. Just raise your physical hand or some sort of a sign on the screen that you want to say something, and then maybe your thoughts during the last year have prompted you to come up with some opportunities brought on by the pandemic. So the floor is now open. We have Angela in Australia.
Hello there, Ole. Hello, everybody.
Hi, Angela.
Nice to be with you this morning. Yes. Just quickly, something that happened here in the state of Victoria was not during the actual lockdowns. We couldn't ride when lockdowns were occurring, but in the periods of time outside of lockdown, our volunteer network, not only for Cycling Without Age, but other agencies and services, was shut down also. And a lot of services and programs and activities were taken over by staff. Council staff provided Meals on Wheels. Some of the outreach services were offered by hospitals or councils, and etc. So what we did, we found a couple of chapters actually trained staff to ride Cycling Without Age for specific facilities where it was safe to do so. And we found that the facilities that took up the offer of us training them, they have bikes, and they have a greater understanding of not only the lengths we go to train our pilots to manage the bike itself, but what we do with the passengers and the things that we do to create relationships and share stories. Now they get why people return to their facility feeling the way that they do and wanting to go again. They've seen the rides that the program that we offer from a different perspective. And the other thing that happened was a lot of our volunteers, I won't put a number to it, I'm generalizing, are in that risk category. And that was another reason why our volunteers and other volunteers in services were not encouraged to participate. So we had to try and be creative and find other ways and other age groups and demographics for our pilots. And we've struggled in that space a fair bit, but that's a little bit about our experience here in Victoria, but Australia.
Thank you so much, Angela. And actually, it leads me maybe to, if we still have Inigo from San Sebastian on the line here, because Inigo, you have also kind of shifted your target group radically, right, during the pandemic.
Hello, dear Ole and everyone. Yes, I mean, for us, it has been a very important year, because I mean, as most of the chapters worldwide, I think we have been focusing on care homes because it was the easiest way to work out. But thank you through the voluntary group that we are working, and Rich is here today with us. We have a small group project that we are trying to shift our user, and it's how to reach the private homes and how to reach in two different ways, via intermediate entities or directly to the home. So we have reduced 50% our rides, but now we are only focusing on these groups. So Also, I want to raise you also if you are having any experience, you know, the chapters that you are not lockout, if you are having an experience with rights getting into the private homes, because I think we are shifting and we have to be prepared, you know, to give different opportunities to people that are not at the care homes, no? Because at least in San Sebastian, 93% of the persons up 65 lives at home. So there is a huge range and broad view that we can, you know, get. We are just starting, and but you know, step by step, and with the difficulties we are having, because you know we know the situation. But you know, I want to be optimistic on that way and try to, you know, to share that as well, that we have an opportunity.
Thank you so much, Inigo. And we have a comment as well from Margarita and Rui in Portugal.
Yes. Hello, everyone.
Hello.
It's because of the question that our colleague from Spain has made. We are not at the moment, because we are in total lockdown right now. The Portugal situation is very bad. We are passing through the worst of times. But in December last month, we made a work on our social media with the people who are alone at home, not in institutions. We made that work. It worked very, very well. We write about 15 people that contact us directly, because we made that effort to provide, to reach those particular people that are alone at their houses. And the daughters and the granddaughters and the grandsons contact us also, and saying, my father, my mother, my grandmother, my grandfather needs a ride, needs some company. I can visit him. I'm with COVID, or I'm in a lockdown. So could you please do the ride? And we did a lots of them last month.
That is fantastic. We have Jane first, and then we have Clara afterwards.
Yeah, I just want to echo Inigo. We found a new opportunity with people just in their homes, but more with not an age or aging challenges, but just mobility impairments in general. So because, you know, we really, you know, the seniors were really untouchable, what we found was we could reach out to different disabilities and bring them out from their homes.
Thanks, Jane. And Clara?
Well, I decided to use the fact that 30 of our bikes, most of our bikes in Ireland are in care homes. So they were all locked down for the whole year. And I thought, how am I going to make the year useful for cycling without? So a number of things. First of all, I got very active on Twitter and used the branding of Cycling Without Age. My Twitter handle is age_cycling, if anybody wants to join. But it keeps the name Cycling Without Age up there, and I'm quite active on specifics of cycling about that. And the other thing I took up was championing the removal of barriers, these kissing gates and metal barriers. I don't know how if they fare around the world, but in Ireland they loved putting these things up in parks and housing estates. So we've got a hashtag now called Kiss the Gates Goodbye. And we're going to approach all councils. And I've got my own local council to actually physically remove the barriers. And I took them on a cycling trip and showed them the barriers. And I pointed out that a regular bike couldn't get through these gaps to mind the trishaws, or the cargo bikes, or the baby bikes on the baby seats on the back of regular bikes. So I've been using the name. Now, the other thing I realized was that most of the trishaws, as I said, are in care homes, so they are locked down. And I realized we need more community-based bikes. And this week, I got calls from 2 people, independently, not related at all, to sponsor community-based trishaws. So they will be ones that can take people out from their own homes and won't be connected with nursing homes. And I now see, thanks to COVID, that we're going to need more community-based bikes. So I'll be working on that. I use the 2 that will hopefully come in the next 6 months and see how they're getting on and promote those, because it is getting people, as some of you have already said, you know, getting a mother or an aunt or a dad, somebody out from their own local area who aren't nursing home based. So we can really use the time we've got in our own countries, I think, to keep promoting cycling without age, sort of tweaking it to promote other things as well. Thanks.
Claire, I absolutely love your activism. And I think you've used the pandemic as a wonderful opportunity to just put that into a whole new gear. So that's wonderful. And then also, I think maybe a conversation that we could continue with is how can we perhaps focus even more on community bikes in the future as well? Because I think the pandemic has kind of unearthed that opportunity and the need. We have also a comment from Luc from Belgium.
Yes, hey, hello. Just an idea of mine, because I'm now starting up a new chapter here in the city where I live, in Oud-Heverlee, and I'm planning to offer vaccination rights to people, because the vaccination centers will start somewhere in March, and by then we will have our new Trisha, and then we can, as sort of promotion introduction, offer vaccination rights to less mobile people. Just an idea.
I think that's a wonderful idea. I think it was in the UK, there was someone who took cancer patients to the treatment because they couldn't go by taxis and they couldn't, there was also, and so they actually used the cargo bikes and trishaws as well.
Yeah,
so.
it's more corona proof in a Trisha than in a taxi, in a car, in fact. Yeah.
Exactly. Christine?
Just in response to Clara's community bikes, Clara, we have probably more community bikes than we have bikes locked up in care homes. But the biggest challenge we've had, and Carol's on somewhere, she'll agree, is the confidence of the pilots to actually embark upon rides. Even at the time where the pandemic wasn't causing total lockdown, they were quite nervous about going out and connecting with other people. So I think that there is a confidence issue there that we might all have to endure and have to kind of work on with our chapters, just to give them the confidence. I mean, ideally, if we could make a case with the government to get our pilots the vaccination earlier, which we are pursuing, actually, we're actively trying to do that. We can then get our pilots protected so that they can be active quicker. But in all our community bikes were fairly static, even up till well, we're total lockdown just now, Clara, but it was really hard to get them to get the confidence to go out and reach out to other people at the moment.
Yeah. Clara, a comment there?
Yeah, I have a model to work from, because on the north side of Dublin in Clontarf we have 2 community-based bikes. It started out with 1 and they were doing so well, there was so much demand. They now have 2 and they've about a team of about 20 pilots. And it's all managed by one guy who has a day job. I don't know how he does it, but he's wonderful. And as long as the pilots are well trained and there's a Google Calendar that people can book onto, and then they can decide. And some of the pilots, I think, are family, so they can take their own family members out. Yeah. So when it comes to doing the south side, which is next on my plan, I'm going to use the model we already have there. And I agree, it's getting the pilots confident. But I think that's important anyway, in terms of if you want them to do it on a regular basis, they have to be trained. And I love your idea. I actually have already asked a couple of care homes, would they vaccinate the pilots for me? Because it struck me straight away that if we could get even one of them vaccinated, who could then go into the care home. So I'm going to work on that as well. Yeah,
absolutely.
That's awesome. We have time for just one more question from, or one more input from Inigo in San Sebastian.
Yes, sorry, maybe, I want to be more precise maybe with my answer before, and I want to finish that so important relating to mental health and the people with Alzheimer. I know that you are a lot of chapters working with this kind of persons, and I want to share the great testimonies we are having nowadays working with doing rights with these people, because we are taking time good for them but also for the people that they are taking care of them, you know, the people they are working in their homes with them. So, you know, I think that is also one of very important route to explore.
Thank you so much, Inigo. And we're about to wrap up this conversation for today, but let's continue the discussion by mainly on the hood, but of course, email, calls, social media, and so on. And also please send me your feedback about this format and any ideas for topics or guest speakers that you would like to share with your CWA colleagues around the world on these calls. We're going to bring them back. My hope is that we can bring them back fairly often as we go through this. I think we need each other. I think this, I personally believe that this format is wonderful, and it's great to see everyone. And I think it brings a lot of value to everyone. Like I said before, Pernille has posted a link to the hood. So if you're not on the hood yet, you can just click on that and request access. If you are on the hood, you can just go straight in and start writing. Now, I started this hour by talking about the missed opportunity of a summit in Norway. And I'm really happy to announce that the ambitious program that the team in Sandefjord had put together last year is only getting more and more ambitious and adventurous by the day. Without saying too much, and I'm hoping I'm not saying too much, Tormod, in May 2022, the Norwegians are organizing a ride through all the 11 regions of Norway. They call them fylker, which is 4,200 kilometers, starting at Nordkapp, which is 500 kilometers north of the Arctic Circle, which is absolutely, totally mind-blowing, even for a crazy bunch of people like us here on the call. But this epic journey will be on Trishaws, of course, and with people with limited mobility as passengers. It's going to be a 14-week, 14-stage ride. Because even if we change some of the activities to fit the new reality, some things will never change. And those are the euphoric feeling that it brings to be included and to feel the wind, and of course, in Norway, the snow in your hair. I think also maybe Pernille, could you share the preliminary map so that you can all sort of get excited about this, and just let us know if you want to take part in maybe one of the stages. I think that would be absolutely wonderful. So that's it for today. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining the call. It's now way past midnight in Australia, and it's still very early morning in British Columbia with you, Jane. Oh, you're actually not in British Columbia, you're in Alberta, right? But even so, it's still early in the morning. I'll see you all very soon again, and just keep all the comments flowing, and go into the hood and make it as vibrant as it has ever been. Thank you so much, and bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye, Ole. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you, and thank you all.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.